it's really funny because I heard someone talk about how college has a way of making you dumber. And this is really funny because I talked about this in my previous experiences about how I had education outside of the institution. And when I tried to enter the institution and implement the things that I had learned, which I knew were factual, right? It was one of those things where I was like graded incorrectly, essentially, because my professor was not aware of those things. And so I started to think about the people who are in position, who have influence, who sometimes we look up to because they're older and they took this path of college, and they come out and they jump on these hot topics like church hurt, right? And they're certified therapists, which there's nothing wrong with being certified. I do think that certain people should acquire certifications, especially if they had like, a very vast life experience, you know what I mean? They're able to help other people. But the dangers of that is just like, these people aren't like licensed therapists, right? Like these are just certified people who just do things, right? And so my point in regards to referencing college was just like, wow, when you sit and think about how many people actually went to college, and then those who didn't go to college because of social media are no longer learning, are no longer acquiring experiences because of social anxiety and just the convenience of doing everything online, the legwork is not a thing, right? It's non-existent. So it's so funny when we have these conversations and we start to think about church hurt and why it becomes like this prevalent topic, and why so many therapists and people who are licensed and people who should be able to think critically about these matters and the things that are kind of like moving onward and upward, they don't speak to this particular perspective. And I think it's because, again, it's that lack of experience. You spend so much time in school, you don't really have any experience. So you, like any other content creator, despite your certifications, despite your degrees, despite your license, you kind of fall into that trap. And I think that's, again, one of the dangers of being in the world and not really being self-educated. Education is the way. So enjoy today's podcast episode. Bye. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Renaissance Room Podcast. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about something that is just so... it's become this like big controversial thing now where everyone's trying to like shed light on something. And shed light on this particular topic, that is. And one thing that I've noticed about culture is like whenever something like is brought to light, whether it be like one situation, people, because I think that I really do think sincerely, because people are so immersed in social interactions that they're not really busy creating their own life. So like people will hear a story or see something and then it becomes this hot topic and people just kind of like run with it, right? It was kind of like the rise of like things like buzzwords for things like feminism and capitalism and, all these different things. And one of those things, which we're going to be talking about today, happens to be church hurt. Now, this is really funny to me because, first of all, I don't even know that many people who even went to church. Like, let's just keep it a buck. Like, for real, depending on where you grew up, let me not, because I know there are some preachers' kids. Okay, there are some preachers' kids, but like the majority of us, girl, we was at church with our grandmas, maybe on a Sunday every 4 months, Easter, Yeah, that was probably it, so that's giving like twice a year. And it's like, when did you really have time to receive church hurt? Because half the people haven't even went to church. Girl, you ain't never been to church. And it's just funny to me because I feel like there's so many people who are just kind of taking this narrative and like running with it and like making it their own. And then they're all just speaking out so negatively about pastors, which is, again, it's so funny because it's like, okay, so when does church hurt become a problem? Is it a problem only in the Black community? Or is it a problem with these mega churches who are still collecting tithes while they have multi-million-dollar televised sermons live streaming on NBC? I mean, you just let me know. You let me know. Because to me personally, I would consider that to be more hurtful than a small congregation that you went to and you attended on Easter and one time, and like twice a year with your grandma. So I just want to know, like, what really is the church hurt? You know what I mean? What really is the church hurt? I think that Christianity kind of has a way of like, it does have a way of kind of, it polishes and refines your life in such a way. So it's like you kind of have like, it's grounding, right? It's grounding. There's bounds, right? There's boundaries. There are certain there's wisdom. Let me just say there's wisdom that you can follow that could really help you, in some aspects of your life. But, I will say this, because I think that coming to Christ, being someone who gave my life to Christ, coming to Christ, like really, I wouldn't say finding my way through Christ, because I've always had a relationship with God, but really, studying Christianity, coming to Christianity and so forth, and adopting it in the principles in my life. It was one of those things to where I do think that even in my previous podcast episodes, and I think that this is something you're going to probably find amongst most people who are new in the faith or just coming to Christ or whatever, you kind of find yourself in a way where you're so passionate about God's word, you're so passionate about what what's in the Bible, that you may come off a bit religious. And I know I've had some previous podcast episodes like that. But, for me, the solution to all of this, is, first of all, let your spiritual practice be something that is yours, is your own. You don't have to bring that to the front lines with everything. And I think that this kind of goes back into this like just mass sense of inclusivity. We're just kind of creating a world where there's no boundaries. You do and you practice whatever you want to practice in your own time, and you do what works for you. I think the sad thing is that you have so many people who don't know what works for them. You have so many people who have absolutely no guidance, and you have so many people who are essentially like social media bots, where they're coming out saying, oh, church hurt, and I don't believe in church, which is so funny, because it's like, girl, you never even went to church, but you never had a church though. But you never even had a church. You never even went to a church on a consistent basis. You never even had a church home. So how can you see what I'm saying? It's kind of just like that blind sheep. Like, I just feel like it'll be someone who is like, has a narrative and people just run with it. And then it's like, oh, all the churches go through this. All the churches experience this and that. And it's like, is that really the case? Is that your experience? And I just think that's the thing, like, that concerns me about this like unanimous conversation or controversy in regards to the church, because it's like, is that your experience though? But did you experience that? And some people who grow up and they feel like, okay, I've lived my life this one way, they're growing in their faith, they realize God is not this person sitting on the throne just like beating you over the head over everything. They start to grow and accept and learn about God's goodness, mercy, grace, and his love. And they start to say, okay, I'm going to kind of let up on some of the rules that were pushed on me by religion and so forth. And they go on and live their lives. And I think that that's your own personal journey. There are a lot of people out here who need some balance. They need some contracts, because society right now, there are none. And a lot of people are saying that they want freedom, but I think that really what that is kind of doing is it's kind of creating this like illusion of like, I don't want to say boundless, because I just feel like at this point this word has been so repetitious in this podcast episode, but it really is. There is this sense of like fluidity, and I don't think they're saying that that's what they want in terms of freedom, but I don't really think that's what they want. I think people want freedom in their own constructs. So I think that kind of looks like freedom of thought, self-expression, authenticity, individuality, things like that. They want freedom to be themselves. But I just think when you're constantly like pushing like spiritual practices and spirituality, it's such a unique individualistic experience for every single person. And I don't really think that that's something that, to be honest, I don't really think it's something that you can kind of push or encourage with anybody. I think like people have to find their way through that. I just think it's unfortunate, again, like I said, when you have people pushing for this mass sense of fluidity and, they're not really sure where they're going in that, right? Like, and it's not a matter of like me saying like you're going to hell. It's just more so like people don't, it's like people are literally like joining a wave, and they don't know if it's going upstream or downstream. You know what I mean? They don't know if it's going left or right. They don't know where this path is going to take them. And people are lost, in other words. And that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, so it's just something to consider. And I just think, again, it's so funny. I remember I tried to watch that stupid movie on Netflix. Yes, it was horrible. It was really, really bad. And I don't even get down with films, but I tried to watch it. It was called You People. I think that's what it was called. It was horrible. I mean, literally 0 out of 10, do not recommend. Like, at this point, I will become a film critic for this tiny little segment. Like, the movie was awful. It really tried to hit on every, like, pop culture, like, typecast, from the church hurt to the, the gay friends. Like, it just was so corny. And I just feel like that's kind of what society is doing. It's kind of like this mass sense of overrepresentation that it's at this point, it's not even representation. It's more so like influence, it's more so like propaganda. It's more so like a new wave of marketing. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so false. And I think that it kind of does this thing to where it's like when we have these conversations, or when someone comes out and speak about church hurt, and then everyone starts saying how they don't believe in the church and there's all this different stuff. It's like, it starts to create a reality that didn't exist prior. You know what I mean? We have to realize that like one person sharing their experience is not speaking for the totality of everybody else. And this is the problem that we have today. People no longer speak from their experience. People are speaking from quote unquote statistics, which is, I heard someone once say that statistics is funny because who's taking the test? Who's taking the test, right? Like, when is the last time you took a test to be surveyed for anxiety and mental health and so forth? So it's like, when we really start to look at statistics in a critical lens, it's like, no, seriously, where are you guys pulling these statistics from? And I think that the best thing you can do, especially in the world of media and today, and just like the plethora of voices and platforms and influence and just all this stuff, right? Influencer content creation culture is pull from your own experience. Is that something you experience in your life? If it's not, then how are you, you know what I mean? You're blindly following what other people are saying. And it's like, a lot of people are afraid to speak up about certain things because of cancel culture. I struggle with that sincerely because I just knew I was speaking the truth. So I'm like, like when you're real, you're speaking the truth. Like, you're kind of like really putting yourself in a vulnerable position. But, for me, I really feel like it's purposeful. I feel like I'm called to do it. I'm purposed to do it. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, I set out with my entire journey with writing was to inspire people. And I think I'm doing just that. So for me, I more so look at it in a different lens. And I hope that me sharing this perspective can help some of you. You have to realize that like, it's just a matter of like growth. And I think that what happens is there's always this like erasure of like a person's past and what led them to be where they are today. People just want to see like this final product. And it's like, no, you guys can hear about some of the paradigms that I've had to change in my life, to some of the ideologies that I adopted and had to overcome and rewrite, the narratives and all the different things. Like, you guys can see that. And so for me, it's just more so like that was my entire purpose. That's why, that's why I refrained the Renaissance Room logo recently. It's a camcorder. And we titled it documentary as I enter into film and journalism, so for me, that's kind of like the whole point. And at this point, it's based on mere observation and my personal experiences, which are great. I would say that my life is pretty enriching. So that's why I do what I do, because I feel like I have a lot to give in terms of insight. I'm pretty well-rounded. So I like what I do. And my encouragement for everyone listening to this podcast today would just be, whenever you find yourself trying to intercede, on the behalf of someone or a person or a thing or whatever, ask yourself, like, where did that come from? If you're someone who's walking around talking about church hurt and feeling the need to advocate on its behalf, did you experience that? Is that something you experienced? Or is that just something that you've heard about? Oh, these preachers be this, or oh, these pastors be this. Like, okay, but did you go to church though? Did you ever even have a church family? And is that something that was conducted in your church life? And if you're growing and you're moving onward and upward, God is a spirit. I believe that. Like, God is the Holy Spirit. He's clearly not here with us like in flesh, right? He's a spirit. So it's one of those things where it's like God is always moving. So it's like, if you feel like you've outgrown the constructs of church, right? That's like a really good foundation to have for life, I would say, especially today. Then you're like, okay, you're moving onward and upward with your spiritual journey. And that's a beautiful thing. God is with you, So it's like, why try to do this thing of like either or? And I think one of the things that's most alarming about today is this great social divide that's currently happening. And it's really interesting to see. So don't be led astray. And, don't just follow things blindly. Really take the time to think critically about the things that appear, to be like a hot topic or like a thing of a, conversation. Because I've heard people say this, and simultaneously these are people whose lives are not reflecting any prosperity, any peace, and it doesn't look like it's much better on that side. You know what I mean? And when I say side, I mean, this faithless, godless type of like thing that people are headed towards. Like, I don't really know. To me personally, from what I'm observing, what I've witnessed, meeting people who have these type of mentalities, is that it just doesn't, I'm not really sure if that's necessarily what brings greater meaning. So I hope you guys are doing well. I hope this podcast was insightful, and we'll talk soon. Peace.